When a lost World War II submarine was finally discovered, experts looked inside and screamed in horror. It had been 75 years, yet they couldn't believe what their eyes saw in a submarine that had been lost for so long. The murky depths of the East China Sea churned silently, concealing secrets that had lain dormant for over 7 decades. On a humid June day in 2019, the research vessel RV** Petrel* cut through the waves, its crew tense with anticipation. Among them stood Tim Taylor, a renowned underwater explorer whose weathered face bore the marks of countless expeditions. His eyes, sharp and focused, scanned the horizon as if trying to peer through the ocean's veil. "We're approaching the coordinates," called out Dr. Sarah Chen, the team's lead marine archaeologist. Her voice trembled slightly, betraying the gravity of the moment. Taylor nodded, his jaw setting with determination. "Prepare to launch the AUV," he ordered, referring to the autonomous underwater vehicle that would be their eyes beneath the waves. As the crew bustled about preparing the high-tech submersible, Taylor's mind wandered to the events that had led them here. It had been a long and winding road, filled with false starts and dead ends, but now, armed with new information and cutting-edge technology, they stood on the precipice of solving one of World War II's enduring mysteries. The AUV slipped into the water with barely a splash, its sleek form disappearing beneath the surface. On board the Petrel*, all eyes were glued to the monitors displaying the vehicle's feed. Hours ticked by, and the tension in the air grew thicker with each passing minute. Suddenly, a gasp echoed through the control room. "Contact!" shouted Chen, her finger pointing at a blurry shape emerging on the screen, approximately 1,400 feet down, bearing 030 degrees. Taylor leaned in, his heart pounding as the image sharpened. The unmistakable silhouette of a submarine materialized. "My God," he whispered, "we found her. The USS Grayback, missing for 75 years, had finally been located." But as the AUV circled the wreck, capturing high-resolution images, the initial emotion gave way to a creeping sense of dread. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. "Tim, you need to see this," Chen called out, her voice quavering. Taylor made his way to her station, his brow furrowing as he examined the footage. The Grayback's hull was largely intact, a testament to the quality of her construction, but near the conning tower, a massive jagged hole gaped open like a wound. As the reality of their discovery sank in, Taylor's mind reeled back to the beginning of this journey. The Lost 52 Project, an organization dedicated to finding the 52 U.S. submarines lost during World War II, had funded the salvage operation. It was more than just a search for sunken vessels. It was a mission to bring closure to families who had waited decades for answers. The story of the USS Grayback, like so many others, was a tale of valor, sacrifice, and the cruel uncertainties of war. A return to the days when the Grayback was more than just a name on a memorial was needed to understand what lay on the seafloor. The story began on April 3, 1940, in the bustling shipyards of Groton, Connecticut. The Electric Boat Company, a venerable institution with a proud history of submarine construction, laid down the keel of what would become the U.S. Grayback. She was to be one of 12 Tamber-class submarines designed to be the most advanced underwater vessels of their time. As World War II raged across Europe, the United States prepared for the possibility of entering the conflict. The Grayback, designated SS-208, was part of this preparation. On January 31, 1941, she slid into the waters of the Thames River, christened by Mrs. Wilson Brown, wife of Rear Admiral Wilson Brown. 5 months later, on June 30, the Grayback was commissioned into the United States Navy under the command of Lieutenant William A. Saunders. For the next several months, the Grayback and her crew underwent rigorous training and shakedown cruises in the waters off Long Island Sound. Little did they know that their skills would soon be put to the ultimate test. The Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, thrust America into the war. By February 1942, the Grayback was steaming towards Pearl Harbor, ready to join the fight in the Pacific Theater. Over the next 2 years, the Grayback would earn a reputation as one of the most successful submarines in the U.S. Navy. She completed multiple patrols under the command of Lieutenant Commander John Anderson Moore, sinking numerous enemy vessels and playing a critical role in the Allied war effort. But it was the Grayback's 10th patrol that would etch her name into the annals of naval history. On January 28, 1944, under the command of Lieutenant Commander Moore, the Grayback departed Pearl Harbor for what would be her final mission. For nearly a month, the submarine prowled the waters of the East China Sea, striking fear into the hearts of Japanese sailors. On February 24, she reported sinking 2 cargo ships. A day later, another message crackled through the airwaves. The Grayback had damaged a Japanese troop transport and sunk a tanker. These would be the last words ever heard from the valiant crew of the Grayback. Days turned into weeks, and the submarine failed to return to its scheduled rendezvous at Midway. On March 30, 1944, the U.S. Navy reluctantly declared the U.S. Grayback lost at sea, along with her entire crew of 80 men. For the families of these 80 sailors, life became an endless vigil. Mothers, fathers, wives and children clung to hope, praying for a miracle that would bring their loved ones home. But as the years passed, hope faded, replaced by a gnawing uncertainty that would haunt generations. One such family was that of Raymond Parks, a young sailor from Ohio who had joined the Navy with dreams of adventure and serving his country. His niece, Gloria Henry, grew up hearing stories of her uncle's bravery and sacrifice. "He was always larger than life in our family stories," Henry would later recall. But there was always this sadness, this void that his disappearance left behind. For decades, the fate of the Grayback remained a mystery. The U.S. Navy's historical records placed the submarine's final resting place about 100 miles southeast of Okinawa, based on Japanese war records. But despite numerous searches, no trace of the Grayback was ever found. Then, in 2018, a breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Yutaka Iwasaki, a Japanese researcher, made a startling discovery while combing through the files of the Imperial Japanese Navy. He found that a single digit in the latitude and longitude of a reported submarine sinking had been mistranslated decades earlier. This error, seemingly insignificant, had thrown off all previous search efforts by nearly 100 miles. Armed with this new information, Tim Taylor and his team at the Lost 52 project set out to solve the mystery once and for all. The Lost 52 project, dedicated to locating the 52 U.S. submarines lost during World War II, represented the culmination of Taylor's lifelong passion for undersea exploration and his deep respect for naval history. Which brings us back to that fateful day in June 2019, when the AAV's cameras first captured images of the long-lost Grayback. As the initial shock of the discovery wore off, Taylor and his team began the painstaking process of documenting and analyzing the wreck. The submarine lay on the seafloor at a depth of 1,427 feet, its hull remarkably well preserved, despite being submerged for over 7 decades. But it was the damage to the conning tower that held the key to the Grayback's final moments. The jagged hole, consistent with a direct hit from an aerial bomb, told the story of violence and sudden death. Based on the location and nature of the damage, Dr. Chen explained, her voice tight with emotion, it appears the Grayback was attacked on the surface, possibly while recharging her batteries. As the team pored over the high-resolution images, a chilling realization set in. The force of the explosion had torn open the pressure hull, exposing the submarine's interior to the crushing depths. The experts screamed in horror. There, frozen in time, were the remains of the Grayback's crew. "Oh God," whispered Taylor, his face ashen. They never had a chance. The images revealed a scene of unimaginable horror. Bodies, now little more than skeletons, were still at their stations. Some were clustered near the escape hatches, a testament to their desperate, futile attempts to survive. Others remained at their posts, loyal to the end. For Taylor and his team, trained to maintain professional detachment, the sight was overwhelming. These were not just historical artifacts or archaeological specimens. They were men, sons, brothers, husbands, and fathers whose lives had been tragically cut short. "We need to contact the Navy immediately," Taylor said, his voice hoarse. "Then we must decide how to inform the families." The U.S. Grayback's discovery sent shockwaves through the naval community and the families of the lost submariners. For many, it brought a bittersweet mix of closure and renewed grief. Gloria Harry, upon learning of the discovery, experienced a whirlwind of emotions. "At first, I couldn't believe it," she said, her eyes brimming with tears. "After all these years, to finally know what happened to Uncle Raymond and the others, it's overwhelming." The U.S. Navy quickly confirmed the discovery, with Robert S. Neeland, head of the Naval History and Heritage Command's Underwater Archaeology Branch, issuing a statement. "The discovery of U.S. Grayback brings closure to a tragic chapter in our naval history. It allows us to honor the sacrifice of these brave sailors and provide some measure of peace to their families." As the coastline came into view, Taylor stood on the deck, watching the play of sunlight on the waves. Somewhere beneath those waters lay the Grayback, her mission finally complete, her crew eternally at rest. On the surface, a new generation kept watch, dedicated to uncovering the stories of the past and honoring those who gave all in service to their country. In the weeks that followed, a solemn ceremony was held at sea above the Grayback's final resting place. The lost crew's family members, many of whom were descendants of those who had never met their relatives, gathered to pay their respects. As a Navy butler played taps, wreaths were laid on the water's surface, sinking slowly toward the silent tomb below. For Tim Taylor and his team, the discovery of the Grayback was both a triumph and a sobering reminder of the human cost of war. "Every submarine we find is a piece of history," Taylor reflected. "But more than that, it's a memorial to the men who served and sacrificed. We owe it to them and their families to tell their stories." The story of the U.S. Grayback's discovery sparked renewed interest in the Lost 52 project and other efforts to locate missing World War II submarines. It highlighted the importance of preserving historical records and the potential for new technologies to unlock long-held secrets. But perhaps most importantly, it served as a poignant reminder of the individual lives behind the statistics of war. Each of the 80 men aboard the Grayback had a story, dreams, and loved ones waiting for their return. Their sacrifice, hidden beneath the waves for so long, could now be properly honored. As news of the discovery spread, it touched off a wave of reflection on the nature of war and remembrance. Veterans groups praised the efforts to locate lost submarines, seeing it as a way to ensure that the sacrifices of previous generations are not forgotten. Historians, too, found value in the discovery beyond the emotional closure it provided to families. Dr. Emily Thornton, A naval historian at the U.S. Naval Academy explained, "Each sunken vessel is a time capsule, preserving a moment in history." The Grayback's wreck can tell us a lot about submarine warfare in the Pacific, the technology of the time, and the experiences of the men who fought these underwater battles. For the families of the Grayback's crew, the discovery opened up new avenues for connection and healing. Support groups formed, bringing together descendants who shared a common bond of loss and newfound closure. Stories and photographs of the lost sailors were exchanged, breathing life into memories that had begun to fade with time. Gloria Harry found herself at the center of this community. "It's like we've all suddenly become part of an extended family," she said. "We're united by our shared history and the sacrifice of our loved ones. It's a bittersweet feeling, but there's comfort in knowing we're not alone." The U.S. Navy, recognizing the historical and emotional significance of the discovery, launched a project to create a comprehensive memorial for the U.S. Grayback and her crew. Plans were drawn up for a permanent exhibit at the National Museum of the U.S. Navy in Washington, D.C., featuring artifacts recovered from the seafloor, personal effects of the crew, and interactive displays telling the submarine's story. Tim Taylor and his team at the Lost 52 project continued their work, buoyed by the Grayback discovery's success. "There are still so many vessels out there, so many families waiting for answers," Taylor said. "Each discovery is a challenge, but it's also an opportunity to honor these heroes and ensure their sacrifices are never forgotten." As the years pass, the story of the U.S. Grayback serves as a powerful reminder of the enduring impact of war and the importance of remembrance. It illustrates the bravery of those who serve beneath the waves and the relentless pursuit of truth by those who follow. For the 80 souls of the Grayback, eternal patrol has ended. They now rest in their ocean grave, known and honored. Their story, lost for so long beneath the waves, will be told for generations to come, a legacy of courage, sacrifice, and the enduring bonds of family and nation. In the quiet depths of the East China Sea, the U.S. Grayback stands silently, a monument to the cost of war and the power of memory. On the surface, a new generation keeps watch, committed to uncovering the stories of the past and honoring those who gave all in service to their country. The discovery of the U.S. Grayback is more than just a footnote in naval history. It is a bridge across time, connecting past and present, reminding us of the human stories behind every statistic, every battle, and every sacrifice.